Ngokosihlehle sevele bumbene insimbi yesithupha nalomhla eksena sinivusele sinamukele ehlelweni Kusile Breakfast Show. Wake up with us again this Thursday morning. A very important day, by the way, as I greet my co-host Lulu. I'm getting too excited. Kuvusela babukeli emakhaya. In fact, let me give you the opportunity to say hi to the viewers as well.
Good morning, Gwen, and good morning to our viewers as well. Thank you for tuning in the Kusile Breakfast Show. We're always happy to have you. We're on the 29th day of August 2024. Good morning and welcome.
Absolutely. Lulu, it's the 29th of August, and this day falls on the third day of the Umhlanga ceremony, which, when I'm looking at the timetable here that was issued, speaks to the fetching of the reed. Having, yesterday seen that Kusile abese AI commissioner yona inzabake yawo Umhlanga sikatsilekela umhlanga ukuthi imbali itawuhamba ye khona ke kuyawugeca wona Umhlanga sibonga ke Tubusiso imvula sathi ke lo ukuthi umalina siyathina sithi thina lesabutheka ke manje sithi ngemafutha endlela siyagcobisa, and we continue to enjoy and revel in the beauty of the weather forecast, but more so the pageantry and being together. So we hope that nakubo ke lo muhla nje njengoba sibonile umcumo ukuthi mkhulu kakhulu nangaka, they will really enjoy going out there to cut the reed. Anyway, on the show today we want to take a closer look at a crucial issue that affects every organization that handles data. And we will be having Eswatini Communications Commission to help us dive into that topic and have a closer look into everything that speaks to personal data, from businesses to religious, as well as religious institutions. As the deadline for registering data controllers and processors approaches, we'll unpack who needs to be on the list, the criteria for registration, and what happens if you miss the mark. Whether you're an employer, a faith leader, or part of any institution that processes data, now this conversation is one you can't afford to miss.
Kunjalo sitawuphinze sikhulumisane nalaba organizer i-conference lebitwa ngokuthi I Am a Man conference. Sibuka dona tindzaba about gender-based violence. Elesokuyendzaba lenkulu kade lapha eveni report nje by the International Commission of Jurists nenhlangano iswaka yavedela ukuthi 1 in 3 girls in Eswatini experience sexual violence before turning the age 18, and 48% of Swazi women face some form of sexual violence in their lifetime, often at the hands of intimate partners. Are often identified as the primary perpetrators of GBV, also lead in suicide rates in Eswatini. In 2015, out of 189 recorded suicide cases, 140 were men. These alarming statistics underscore significant mental health issues among men, contributing to both GBV and suicide. Recognizing this crisis, Dr. Jeremy Fokeng Wamaketa from South Africa, Utabalapa Eswatini, I Am a Man conference, what yes men struggles in Eswatini. Titled I Am a Man. He shares his journey of overcoming past traumas and also transforming into a man of virtue. Kusile will be joining us. She's the founder of the conference. Postponed the event. It was supposed to be on the 31st, but I told 4 September. She'll be joining us at 7:30. Do stay tuned. Come on, just begin. Leading headlines on the Times of Eswatini this Thursday morning. Lipovela in our midst, Gusho Prince Hlangabeza. That is a picture of Imbali, Naisuga Itole Ngabezweni. Cancellating Etamba Imbili, Home Affairs corruption, arrest warrants for 8 employees. And in other news, 3 Build-It employees have been arrested for 2 million Malangeni theft, and 2 families homeless after wildfire. PAC's bid to stall passing of loan bills.
Times of Eswatini, as Sihlangu AFCON opponents reveal squad, 18 Europe-based stars in game. Only one player plying his trade in Africa named in Guinea-Bissau side for September 5 clash. Eswatini athletes paint Zim gold is another leading story there, as they were simply the best. About 7 of the medalists of Team Eswatini have been named there, starting from gold medalist to a silver medalist, a bronze medalist, another silver medalist, and other 2 bronze medalists, and that accumulates to 7 of them. On that achievement, Stellenbosch beat Sundowns in MTN 8 first leg. 8-bet Trade Fair Cup, another leading story which speaks to the triple header delight. It is game on, and we are going to see those games happening this weekend.
Moving on to the Eswatini Observer, leading headlines this morning. King receives 14.7 million amalangeni tetfulo for umhlanga. Gifts include 67 cows, cash and food. King Misizulu Eswatini joins King and Their Majesties gift imbali, sneakers and food. Kuletinye letamba imbili, Koko's live saved by neighbors. You can read that more on page 3. And Bishop says taxing churches is a waste of time.
Triple header dose in 8-bet opener. It's Trade Fair Cup. Knockout tournament starts on Sunday. 60 Malangeni for triple header and 50 Malangeni double header. Another story speaks to the ex-marketing manager that demands 250,000 Malangeni from the Premier League of Eswatini. We are not withdrawing. That's according to Denver. Denver Sundowns have categorically denied reports that they have withdrawn from the ongoing court case involving Imanzini Wanderers, who are challenging their relegation to the National First Division.
That's where Eswatini Daily News leading headlines. Good news for 43,000 civil servants. Salary review consultation resumes. And throngs of Imbali commissioned by His Majesty yesterday.
Nyanga redeployed. Long-serving coach Nyanga Crooksthorpe has been replaced by former Denver Sundowns and Babane Swallows trainer Musa Manyatsi at Manzini Wanderers. This is ahead of the new season. The EFA retain Anthony as well as Dennis. Many players have alcohol problems. Is another leading story there.
Yeah, and that's it for our newspaper headlines. It's 7 minutes after 6. We will go for an ad break. As we start at Inzaba.
I'm a very, 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 very happy customer.
I know.
Imali ebhizinisi ayidlika wayidla udabula phasi.
Hayi ngimsebenzi yethu lesindako la ekhaya njengoba niyibona limihle nakangaka.
Ngiyakolosha, which is crocheting.
Ngiyakhicita ke noko kakhulu emsebenzini wethu ikhumba.
Ngenda kwegaba emaqiqi nokwegaba entsanyeni.
Ngilungisa emagedlela.
Hello, how are you? We are selling peanuts at 5. Thank you so much. Umdala kubusi. On the strat, babe.
Asimze sinibukele sivusela nalo sanza kusivulela nadidi Inzaba. Indlovukazi Mhlekazi ikhokhela ibutho lembali esigodlweni elisitsini ukuthi liqhubekele esigodlweni ngabezweni yawuthola indlela engwenyameni ukuthi lo nyaka liyawukhukha kuphi umhlanga. Libutho ebelikathe liholwa inkosatana lizinyane zakhizwe.
Kulandzela ukuthi libutho lembali litheleke ngemningbalo esigodlweni elisitsini nasesigodlweni engabezweni kutawubhalisa. Imbali ivukele ngemandla nangemgcumo esigodlweni elisitsini kuyawuklamela. Libutho belikade liholwa ngemakhosatana yisilo. Libutho lembali likhombise inshisekelo nenhlokoto ngemuva kokuthi uvakale uyezwa na. Imbali ke ifike yashingelita emabaleni esigodlweni embikwendlovukazi Mhlekazi kwasha ingoma ikhombisa ubugabazi bayo. Indlovu yemhlaba beyikade isingethwe sigodlo. Ufike kwasha ingoma kwasela sibukeli khona emabaleni esigodlweni. Ngosatana sakhizwe ibese iyawucela indlela kumhlekazi lapho umhlekazi alinike khona libutho indlela lebheka esigodlweni engabezweni.
Siyini siyimbali eMaswati sichakazile sincobile iCovid wethe wena phakathi mbali ithi indlovu yemhlaba nasiphuma la Eltsitsini siqonza engabezweni. Imbali ingaphambuki nembali ikhumbule lemiyalo leyalwe ngayo nayiphuma emphakathini. Ngosi Mhlekazi mbali indlovu yemhlaba infisela indlela lenhle.
Libutho libese lingenela indlela lelibhekisa esigodlweni engabezweni lapho khona liyawuthola ukuthi isilo semhlaba sithi libutho alihephi lonyaka kuyawugeca wona umhlanga. Ngendlela belikade likhombisa kuthakasa nenjabulo njengoba belisolo lihambe njalo lingaphele emandla futhi linemdlandla. Asemlonyeni ingoma beyisolo ishe njalo. Libutho ke lifike lapha lathi kugoba emadvolo kancane ekubeni liphume esigodlweni likhokhwe ngiyo indlovu yemhlaba. Kanike lo mkhosi lona ngulemye yemikhosi lenesasasele lisetulu njengoba seyineminyaka leminengi selo yaba khona. Kanti ke nalonyaka timbali tikhombise kungeteka tinombolo uma kucathaniswa neminyaka leminye njengoba tinkulungwane netinkulungwane telibutho lembali tibhalisele lona mkhosi weminyaka wa 2024. Sikhulumisene nenkosatana lizinyane sakhizwe lelikhuthaze kakhulu imbali ukuthi ichubeke nekugcina nekulondoloda lelisiko.
Kuba kuhle lokuthi sikhone ukugcina emasiko ethu ngoba nasita nje lamhlangene kusifundisa nekugcina ubuphobi bethu. kuba imvo lehle leyo lokuthi ufunze nje usakhula lokho uthi nasa umdzala udawube bese uyabona kodwa ukuthi wo nayi lemvo boma ke nabo babili bahlale bebangikhulisa ngako bese ke nawe nje uyimbali uyakhona nje ngekuthi igcapha ngalabutfobi bakho.
Mhlambe kwegcina Nkosi sengingaba ngikonje ngoba libutho nalo lihola emva kwakho liphumile ngebuningi balo kuyikhuthata nje imbali ukuthi liwukhuthalele kakhulu lo mkhosi.
Lo mkhosi kuhle lokuthi imbali ikhuthalele ngoba logcina emasiko ethu kuyasikhumbuta nathi ukuthi sibobani. Siyakhona lokuthi bese singalahleki nje sibantu futhi singemaswati. Sibobani sibuyaphi bogogo nabomkhulu nabo bebendani.
Lo mkhosi lona sewaba sibuko selive kanti futhi sewaba nguleminye yetindlela tekukhanga tivakashi ukuthi tite Eswatini kutawufaka sandla kufukula umnotfo. Sikhulumisene netivakashi letibuya eTaliyane letetsite natifika kuleli takhanza leSwatini lenda emalungiselelo alomkhosi tase tiyathatheka.
We are here, me and my friends, to attend the ceremony. We heard about this ceremony, this cultural event from our tour guide, Mixo, in the Manzini city, in the Kapunga village. So we are really happy to attend this cultural event.
My name is Chiara. I come from Italy. We are 8 of us, a whole group. And we actually were very lucky because we visited Eswatini for just one day and we figured out that it was this particular day. And so we're staying here to enjoy this nice event.
Imbali ivakele ngengoma emabaleni esigodlweni engabezweni ngesikhathi seyivusela engwenyameni libutho belikade liholwa ngamakhosatana aso silo. Imbali beyikade ihamba nanato tindvuna tayo besuka nato emimangweni yelive ngekwehlukana kwayo. Ivakaliseke inhlokomalo lenkulu embikwe ngonyama ukuthi nalonyaka emakhosi aphinze alibite libutho lihlangane ngalendlela. Ngaphambi kokuthi libutho lithole indlela licale lakhombisa bugabazi embikwesilo semhlaba lebesikade sisengethwe namazinyane bamva benkosi vunankulu nalacwebetelako. Bekakhona ke namakhosikazi esilo khona esigodlweni engabezweni. Inkosatana Sakhizwe ibe seyisonzela embikwesilo ngemuva kokuthi libutho ligithe kuyawuthola ukuthi ingwenyama ithi libutho liphuma libhekaphi lonyaka. Inkosatana ibese yethula umlayeto wesilo loshoko ukuthi labancane bayake ukugecaphi kanjalo nalabadzala.
Lalela mbali. Sitawuqala ngekubonga Tipho letiphuma enkosini. Sesitawuphakamisa sibonga. Bethe! Mbali ingonyama ithi labancane batawuyogeca kabhamsakhe bayethe ya phakathi labadzala batayogeca eMbisi Farm ya phakathi. Mbali ingonyama infisela luhambo loluhle ithi nibuye nemhlangano omuhle lotowakha emaguma bethe umfalo wabhamsakhe akatsabuki tsabuka bhamsakhe.
Imbali ibheke ukuthi ibuye nemhlangano muhle nalotawusebenziseka ngekuthunywa ngiwemakhosi. Libutho futhi libheke ukuthi lifike liphephile libumbene solo limunye lapho lithunywe khona ngamakhosi.
Sobala sabonke
Intsabeni kubika Pholile Mazia anathemba mamba esigodlweni engabezweni.
Libutfo lembali selekhute elwandle ngetipho leliphiwe tona ngemakhosi. Lelibutfo lemukele letipho esigodlweni engabezweni ngemuva kokufika kwalo ekubeni likhokhwe indlovukazi emhlekazi esigodlweni eLutsitsini.
Ngaphambi kokuthi ingwenyama ilikhokhe libutfo lembali ukuthi liye lapho alithume khona umnikati, emakhosi aphele libutfo tipho. Letipho betfake ekhathi lokuya ngasethunjini, emateki, emanti, kwakunatha lokutalinika emandla libutfo lisashuca. Inkosatana-ke ivele yahola libutfo kwekhuta lwandle, lase libutfo lemukela letipho.
Hey, lalela mbali. Inkosi iphekile.
Libutfo belikade lingulelithokote kakhulu ngesikhathi lemukela letipho. Imbali ivakalise kungalokukhulu kanye nenjabulo yayo kuthi emakhosi ayiphele tipho.
Siyabonga ingwenyama ngalesendele kona. Mahle nje niyabona babukeli. Woohoo! Lonyaka siyabonga ingwenyama yefusi kabake. Siyabonga enkosini ngetipho lasiphetona sesita ukhona khamba ngato ticatfulo sidlale ngato nangabe sidlala bayethe wena waphakathi Nkosi Ndlovukazi Mhlekazi. Sicela kubonga emakhosi ngetipho lasinikete tona. Sibonga kakhulu, si happy kakhulu, siyajabula vele kakhulu. Bayethe wena waphakathi. Bayethe wena waphakathi. Nkosi Ndlovukazi Mhlekazi.
Letipho tinguletinye letende ukuthi indlela yelibutho olisaya lapho lithunywe khona ingwenyama ibe melula. Etintsabeni kubika Pholile Mazia menazweli masuku esigodlweni engabezweni.
Umhlonishwa Ndvunankhulu Russell Dlamini uthi uhulumende sewulicedzile luhlelo ngaphansi kwesicubulo sankwe sekuthi umnotfo welive leSwatini ungathuthukiswa njani kude impilo yemaswati itawuba ngulengcono. Ndvunankhulu abekhuluma emhlanganweni wahulumende kanye netinhlangano takamhlaba lapho kubuka khona ukuthi ingabe kuleminyaka lesihlanu leyengcile live libambisene njani namhlabuhlangene, lekuthi kuleminyaka lesihlanu letako leSwatini litawubambisana njani namhlabuhlangene.
Imigomo yakamhlaba yentuthuko lekhonsako ema-SDG siselelwe iminyaka lesihlanu nje kuphela ukuthi-ke ifike emaphethelweni ngeminyaka ka-2030. Insayala enkulu umhlaba lobhekene nayo ukuthi kusazuzelwe ku-17 kuphela kuloko lokubhekekile kulama-SDGs. Inhlangano yakamhlabuhlangene kanye nahulumende welive laseSwatini babambe umhlangano endlungulo yamhlabuhlangene eMbabane lapho babuka khona ukuthi ingabela kangwane lingazuza njani kule migomo kule minyaka lesihlanu lesele nekuthi-ke mhlabuhlangene angalibambisa njani live tinhlelweni talo tentuthuko.
We have concluded the Nkwe program of action which seeks to attain an annual GDP growth rate of 12% by the year 2028. It is no doubt that sustainable development goals are embedded within the targets that we have set for ourselves in government's program of action, and that they bring focus to our development trajectory. At this juncture, I would like to thank the UN system and all our development partners for the support that they have proffered to the government of the Kingdom of Eswatini in the past. And it is our hope that you will rally behind government's program of action. Government's plan prioritizes energy security as an anchor economic driver, where we seek to make Eswatini a green economy by generating renewable energy to meet our domestic needs. Currently, 100% of energy generated in the country is renewable, and we would like to maintain this status. Hence, a target of more than 120 megawatts of renewable energy is targeted and planned. However, the impact of climate change in 2015 and 2016 has taught us that a good energy mix is necessary, and we should not rely on renewable energy alone.
Umphathi wetinhlangano tamhlabuhlangene kuleli George Wachira uthi njengoba sivumelano seminyaka lesihlanu lebanaso nelive leSwatini sesifike emaphethelweni kumcuka ukuthi babuke ukuthi basebente njani kule minyaka lesihlanu lendlulile nekuthi ke batawubambisana njani kule minyaka lesihlanu letako kusukela ngeminyaka wa-2026 kuya ku-2030.
Interestingly, the next 5 years are going to correspond exactly with the last 5 years of the 2030 agenda. So we are hoping that within the next 5 years, through our cooperation framework that we are going to begin to develop now, will generate some good ideas about how we might be able to go forward in that last 5-year period.
Hulumende uthi waweva kahle eMaswati esibayeni ukuthi yini lakhala ngako ke utawugijima athi nkwe kukulungisa konke lokho. Etisabente Eswatini TV ngilingtin Gule ngisembabane.
Imvana yelitulo temabhizinisi umhlonishwa amanqoba khumalo ithi setithethwe tonke titandi tekukhangisa ngemisebenzi lehlukene yabosomabhizinisi embukisweni walonyaka. Imvana bekhuluma emhlanganweni nebetindzaba emahhovisini elitiko layo neqinisekisa sive ukuthi onke amalungiselelo alombukiso ahamba kahle.
Sibhekile ukuthi uhulumende wonke abe khona, sibhekile ukuthi ama-international partners ethu abe khona kulo msebenzi. Lokutawufaka ikhathi Secretary General waka AFCFTA lenaye sayaconfirmele ukuthi utawuba khona kulo msebenzi. Lese sikudayele ukuthi emakhosi avakashele onke lama stores abuke lemisebenzi lento ngeMaswati, abuke lemisebenzi lento abosomabhizinisi labancane, bosomabhizinisi labasemkhathini nabosomabhizinisi labakhulu. Lokunye ke lesikujabulela ukuthi nema parastatals ahulumende nawo atabe yakhona aphelele kulo msebenzi. I-trade fair yalonyaka ke siyajabula ngaloko ukuthi vele i-trade fair lekhombisa kundlondlobala ezingeni lebelisetulu eminyakeni lophelile. Kutawuba nema workshops lamanengi, workshops emabhizinisi kunale center lesinayo lapha kuthiwa i-F&B Business Center lesitawube sinayo bese futhi kuba ne-F&B Business Chamber nayo lesitawube sinayo. Ngilapho khona sitawube sinema-workshops ngekwehlukana kwawo ekubukisa ukuthi amabhizinisi angachubeka kanjani, i-trade ingachubeka kanjani, imali ingatholakala kanjani, lusito lokwenta ibhizinisi ulithola kanjani. Lokubuya kwebhola into lesijabulela kakhulu. Sibonge kubambisana kwa-IPA abambisene kakhulu ne-Premier League of Eswatini lokho ukuthi le bhola vele ibuyile ngoba le sponsorship lesi sitawuthatha iminyaka lembalwa.
Libandla lebatshali imali eveni belisingethwe libandla le-MN Capital ngekubambisana ne-Stracom Media ehlelweni lwesine lwe-Eswatini Institutional Investors Forum lwa-2024 lapho bekukhulumiswa kabanti ngetindzaba tekucalwa kwamabhizinisi emasu ekutshalwa kwemali nenhlalakahle kanye nekuphatha.
I-MN Capital Group inxuse abahlanyeli timali eveni ukuthi benyusele izinga labahlanyela ngalo imali emnothweni welive. Lokhu kuvetwe ngumphathi we-MN Capital Group lochamuka eNingizimu Afrika Michael Ndinisa emhlanganyweni webahlanyeli timali loba ubanjelwe eHappy Valley eZulwini.
These discussions are important. These discussions will make the economy grow. These discussions help with making sure that these risks and these challenges, are discussed. Now we're talking AI that we need to incorporate. We're talking new technological advances that we're talking about. We're talking climate issues. Climate change is affecting a lot of things. Post-COVID, there was a lot of distractions as well.
Futhi Dembe longumphathi we-Eswatini National Provident Fund ugcizelele bumcoka bekuhlomisana ngelwati.
Nami lana ngite kuto contribute akusindlela nithongene senda njani to make ukuthi imali yema members ethu ingawi kakhulu in terms of the returns. Diversifying investment portfolio is key. Kuyashiwo ukuthi emacanza akho ungawafaki ebhodweni linye. So sidlelani Mfongeni, we practice that. But lokhu kukhulu kakhulu sidlelani Mfongeni u-investor la kangwane.
Umphathi we-Public Service Pension Fund, Masotsha Vilakati, uthi kumcoka ukuthi bahlanyele timali babuke tinhlangothi letinye labangahlanyela khona timali eveni.
Uzama nje ukuthi ku-encourage neku-invite abantu labo somabhizinisi kakhulu labanema ideas lamasha ekwenta amabhizinisi, but ibhizinisi letawukwenta imali, ibhizinisi letawukhona ukuthi ithuthukise amaswati, ikhona nekukhulisa letikhoma lesitiphethe.
Ingwenyama nayivula sigaba sekucala sephalamende yeli-12 yanxusa hulumende ukuthi achamuke netinhlelo tekukhulisa umnotfo ngalokulishumi ekhulwini ngeminyaka wa-2028. Kubika Nomphumelelo Khumalo, nginasipho sami Gininza navuma inkosi ezulwini.
Kutemidlalo inkosikazi Ntendesa seyisukumise ngalokusemthethweni umqhudelwano wesibili we-Run for Wellness lokubheka ukuthi ubanje mhla ka-28 kule nyanga letako. Inkosatana bemelelwe nguKhabo Dlamini longumcondzisi wayo eSheshire Homes. Kulo mqhudelwano eSheshire Homes ebambisene ne-Eswatini Fitness Center, iMasapa Business Forum kanye namasipala. Kuletinye abadlali belikhethelwe lesive labomake lemidlalo yama-darts labangenele umqhudelwano wema-Region 5 walonyaka lobanjelwe kuleli bathi njengoba inyanga yengci kuyinyanga yabomake batawusebenzisa leli thuba abadlale kahle baphinde bathole imindlela kule midlalo. Imidlalo ingene elangeni layo lekucala esibayeni lojidolo. Inhlangano ye-Eswatini Football Association iqhuba uhlelo lwe-Grassroots Festival enhlangano lobuketa inhlelo taka-EFA Biza Mkhonda uthi umgomo lomkhulu uhlanyela lwati lwebhola lolwingilo kubadlali basebancane. 28 minutes before 7 siphetha lapho tindzaba tetfu tesiswati siyabuya nasithatha ikhefu.
Eswatini TV will be at the International Trade Fair 2024, bringing you exciting opportunities to connect with a wider audience and boost your brand visibility. ESTVA is offering incredible specials that include 5-minute on-location interviews, engaging viewers directly, spot advertisements, 30 seconds congratulatory messages, and much more. Do not miss out on this chance to increase brand awareness, generate lead and sales. Our details are displayed on the screen.
Renewal of TV licenses for 2024 is now open. Here is a quick reminder. A viewer's TV license costs 180 emalangeni per device. Other accessories such as decoders and set-top box cost 50 emalangeni per device. For traders and repairers, TV license costs 300 emalangeni per business area. And now, to pay your TV license, use these following methods. You can use MTN Mobile Money with the number 76222000 or dial *007 *3 *7#, or you can use Eswatini Imali. You can pay our TV license at any post office in the country. Another option is you can use any NetBank branch using our TV license account number 119900430037. Don't forget, when paying for your viewers' TV license, reference with your PIN at all times. And when paying for a retailer TV license, reference with your TIN at all times. For more information, call us on 7802-4543 or 34050163 or 34020879. And you can send us a WhatsApp message on 762222000.
Welcome back. You're still watching Kusile Breakfast Show. This is the Thursday edition. We're getting into our very first interview segment, which touches the very core of how organizations manage and protect the information we trust them with, and that is our data. Now, with us today is Lindo Sibanze. Lindo is the Data Protection Officer at the Eswatini Communications Commission. As the clock ticks down to the what we may call the registration deadline for data controllers and processors, we want to delve into what this means for religious institutions, employers, and other entities that handle sensitive data. We want to explore the threshold that determines who must register, the fees involved, as well as the serious implications of missing the deadline. Lindo, thank you so much for joining us on the program. We want to understand the basics first and foremost. I know that you've been here, maybe say what, 3 times, 2 times, and we have understood the basics. But we have new viewers every day, and not everyone has a long-term memory. So let's refresh everyone's memory and just, understand the basics of, just what it means to be a data controller or processor and why it's important for institutions to register.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me today. So being a data controller is basically an organization or an entity basically that determines the purpose of processing personal information. To determine the purpose of processing personal information, you're basically deciding as an organization that if you want to hire a person, for example, this is the kind of information that we are looking for. This is the kind of personal data we are looking for from the individual. If we want to give them a provision of a service, this is the kind of information that this particular individual is supposed to be giving the organization. And then for a data controller, for a data processor, it's basically an organization that processes personal data on behalf of another organization. So if as an organization, you are basically storing information on behalf of another organization, you become a data processor. For example, we do have organizations like RSTP that is basically for storing information. That organization becomes a data processor because they store information on behalf of another organization. But you as Eswatini TV, when you are basically collecting information for license requirement, the TV license, you basically become a data controller. So those are the key definitions there.
Okay. I know that, the deadline is approaching. And, people have registered, some still haven't. Maybe without mentioning other organizations, I just want to highlight that Eswatini TV has complied already and we have paid everything that we need to pay. And I think that is very important. And I'd love for you to, compliment us on, being compliant.
Yes.
Being compliant, sorry.
Okay. Yes, Eswatini TV is part of the organizations that have registered, and they've already even paid the registration fee, which means that they are fully compliant, which is the first step basically towards compliance of the Data Protection Act, basically. So Eswatini TV is going to be part of the list of organizations that we're going to be issuing certificates in the next batch. But already when you go on our website, on the registered entities, you're going to find Eswatini TV as part of the registered entities.
And that is what happens when you have a competent, management that is always stepping foot forward in making sure that we comply on the things that are important. I want us to look at religious institutions and employers. I'm seeing here that there's a particular emphasis in their registration process. Why is that?
So a lot of religious institutions carry a lot of personal data. So when you go to church right now, because it is modern, they collect your personal information for membership, number one, that's the first one. You go there, they collect your personal data for membership. If you are a visitor, they do collect your personal data as well to say that we want to call you so that you can be part of our institution, as well as churches. They do a lot of counseling right now. So if I have issues with someone and then I have mental issues as well, they do counsel people. So it's important that they comply with every element of the act in order to ensure the transparency and even the trust with the people that they collect the information from. So we've already had like churches that have been calling us, asking us about registration. We even had a session with Conference of Churches as well as the Council to discuss the Data Protection Act as well as how they are required to comply with the Act. Even today we're going to be having a meeting at the AGM for the churches, which is the Conference of Churches, so that we can discuss with the pastors on how they can comply with the Act.
Yeah, and I suppose this becomes a sort of, for someone that goes to church, you want to make it some sort of a prerequisite to learn that your church complies, because if they don't, then that's a problem, I suppose, even for you as an individual, someone as a church goer. So we encourage churches. There's quite a lot of churches in Eswatini, Lindo.
Yes.
That's a lot of work for you guys.
Yes, it is a lot of work, but we are going to the conferences and the council and the league to discuss with them first, and then after they're going to be taking the information down to the churches as well. But then if you are a church out there and then you want to talk to us about the Data Protection Act, we do come to churches, and then we'll be sensitizing the Act as well to take you through what are the requirements of the Act so that you ensure that you are compliant as well.
Speaking of the requirements, let's speak on the threshold and requirements in terms of, for data subjects, what is the threshold that necessitates what one could call registration, and how should organizations determine if they meet this requirement?
Okay, so as the Eswatini Data Protection Authority, we issued a final decision on the registration of data controllers and data processors. Okay. So the final decision came up with a threshold that basically says that if you have more than 10 individuals as part of your membership, then you are required to register. So if you collect information for more than 10 individuals, you are required to register personal data. And then if it's sensitive data, then you are required to register if it's just 5 individuals. So there's a difference between personal data and sensitive data.
Maybe you could get into that now.
Yes.
Because I'm thinking, as someone that wants to start a church and I'm not looking at anything more than 9 members, then I suppose I don't have to register.
Already, when we look at the Act, when we look at race, when we look at religion is considered sensitive.
Absolutely.
So when you are processing already 5 people from there, you are already processing sensitive information. So for churches, it's basically 5 individuals.
I don't know a single church that has less than 5
Yes,
members. So, yeah, okay, I see what you did there.
Yeah.
So then what is I suppose, the other side of sensitive information?
So for sensitive information, we do have race of people. So my race is sensitive. My political opinion is sensitive. We do have also gender. Gender is considered sensitive as well. So, but then if you want to know more, we do have it on our website. Okay. We can then go there and then learn more about which data is considered sensitive and which data is considered personal. Even for the children's data, if you collect children's data, it is considered sensitive.
Absolutely.
Yes, because children are considered vulnerable. So any data that involves them should be handled with extra caution. Yes.
It makes me wonder then, because from everything that you're mentioning, the demographics, it seems to me there's no information that is not sensitive. So for the other organizations that have the 10-member threshold, what kind of information could be that,
It's names of people,
okay.
ID number, it's someone's
Sounds
age.
sensitive to me.
Yeah, but the X says it's personal data.
Okay.
Someone's age, marital status, if you take someone's marital status,
Okay.
if you take, that information.
Interesting indeed. Let's look at current progress.
Yes.
If we don't estimate progress, then what good is this conversation that we are having here? Are there any trends in terms of, institutions that have been proactive so far, the types of organizations that have been compliant so far?
Yes, so there are trends, but then firstly, I would just like to express my gratitude as the organization with regards to all the organizations that have registered so far. So currently, we are seeing a lot of organizations being proactive about complying with the Data Protection Act. We have over 260 organizations right now that have already signed up on our online platform. And then of those, we already have organizations like 130 organizations that have registered. And then out of those 130 organizations, we do have 100 organizations that are fully compliant right now, which means that they are actually fully registered with the ETPA. And then of those organizations, we are seeing a lot of financial organizations that are really proactive about it. Yes, financial, because they are basically regulated a lot, so they usually want to comply with the regulation, with the Act. And then we also have telecommunications. All the telecommunications that we have in Eswatini, they are fully compliant right now. They are registered with us, which includes both Eswatini Mobile and MTN as well. They have registered and we've already issued the certificate. We also have even the utilities companies. Both of them, they are actually compliant already.
Broadcast media too. Certain TV has, been proactive enough to be the first company, the first organization to register.
Yes.
Makes me wonder, 260 you said have already signed up,
yes.
Plus 100 have already registered. Do you have like a ballpark estimate of the overall number that you're looking to register? Because for me, it sounds like you are still scratching the surface, but at the same time, which is great because companies, certain organizations, we are seeing a trend of, proactivity there.
Yes. We are hoping that almost all the organizations that process personal data register by the 30th of September 2024, which means that it's their first step towards the compliance with the Data Protection Act. So we don't really have the key estimate right now, but then we are doing our stakeholder mapping to try and find out how many organizations process personal data in Eswatini to ensure that all these organizations that process personal data comply with the Act.
Very, very interesting. And I can tell you now, it's over 1,000 organizations that process sensitive data, looking at just the church spectrum of things. Financial considerations. I know a touchy subject here sometimes, but I want to know what the registration fees involved for data controllers and processors are.
Okay. For the registration fees, it's key to note that our final decision actually went through a lot of consultations. So we did issue notices on the newspapers to let people comment or provide comments on the registration fees so that we are all on the same page. So we even had sessions with Business Eswatini and other organizations to ensure that we are all on the same page on the registration fees. So the registration fees basically range from 500 to 3,000 emalangeni, which means that it is based on your annual turnover as well.
Okay, I'm not going to do the math with regards to the 260 that have signed up and the 100 that have already registered and the figures that you have just articulated. But I do want to commend you there. You sound really media trained. I think you're ready for, even entering the diplomacy, stage with the way that you answered that question in particular, starting from the fact that you started by consulting and it was a general consensus. Consequences of non-compliance. And I suppose this is very key. What are some of the potential repercussions for not complying, really, or failing to register before the deadline?
Like every act, all act comes with penalties. So if you do not comply with a particular act, you are guilty of an offense. So we don't really want... most of the time we don't really look at the penalties and all that, because we are hoping that all organizations by the 30th of September would have registered. And then if they don't register, they are going to explain to the Eswatini Data Protection Authority why they haven't registered. So if you want to know more on the penalties as well, it was key that you read more on the Act. And as well, we can add that it is very high, and it can make a business basically go down if you don't comply with the Act.
Yeah. Many SMEs, and I suppose they find requirements, rather registration process is daunting, something that we have seen. It has become a trend. What specific advice or support does ASICOM offer to ensure that smaller businesses can meet these data protection requirements without being overwhelmed by the process?
Okay. So we have made our registration very easy. So we do have our online portal where you go and you register, which is the www.edpa.org.za. So the moment you get in that page, the first thing that you're going to see is basically our registration guide. So the registration guide is basically a step-by-step instruction that will guide you towards how you have to register and how you can answer each question. So if we are asking you what kind of processing activities you do, it is clear on the registration guide that, oh, this is what we are looking for. What kind of information you collect, who are your data subjects. We do provide examples. And then the other thing to note is that even on the registration forms, we do have drop-downs. Drop-downs that will allow you to put the key information. So it wouldn't make you think a lot. It will just give you the examples already. It will give you a drop-down to say that if we are asking what are the data subjects, it will say that are you collecting information from children? Are you collecting information from your employees? Are you collecting information from anyone else? So it's much easier to use. We're also going to be at the trade fair by the Grand Marquis, and we are going to be also assisting organizations that want to comply with the Act. So if organization wants to ask more questions with regards to the registration, they can come to us by the trade fair, as well as we do have our email address where they can contact us anytime in case they want any assistance. And even they can reach us on our cell phones and our lines, which is 2406 7000.
Okay, good enough. And, you know, I'll vouch for the website myself. Very user-friendly, very seamless, and comprehensive information that I've gone through it myself. Now, once registered, what one would call ongoing obligations for data controllers and processors in terms of data protection standards? How does ASICOM monitor and ensure that these standards are being met? That's a parting question.
Oh, yes. So we are going to be having audits. We're going to be auditing each and every entity. And also we are issuing different guidelines to assist the organization on how they can comply with the Act. So we have different guidelines that will be assisting them. We're going to be having even assessment templates that will assist organization on how they can comply with the Act as well. So from there, they'll be able to understand. We even offer awareness sessions where we'll go to different organizations, and then we'll take them through the Act in order for them to understand what are their obligations.
Yeah.
Well,
Lindo, thanks so much for joining us on the program. And I think, you know, as we've discussed today, the registration of data controllers and processors is very imperative. And, you know, I think the insights that you have shared with our viewers, of course, do not fall short. We've come to the end of our interview segment. We'll go for a net break. Start with a traffic update.
Do you pay your TV license and are up to date with your payments? If not, here is your chance. If you own a TV set, a decoder, or a set-top box and you voluntarily declare, the TV license fees will not be backdated and you will only be required to pay for the 2024 TV license fee. On top of that, you will also avoid paying the 50% penalty fee. This offer is valid until the 30th of September 2024. However, If you pay before the last day of this year's trade fair, you stand a chance to win awesome prizes. The draw will be conducted on the last day of the trade fair, the 8th of September 2024. Take advantage of this leniency period. It's not too late to make the right choice. Pay your TV license and be a compliant citizen. Pay your TV license through any of these TV license pay points, MTN Mobile Money, Eswatini Mobile Imali, Eswatini Post Office, and our NetBank account. When you make payment for your TV license, always remember to reference with your personal identity number.
Ngosilenhle siphinze sinamukele ehlelweni kulesikhathi sanyalo sida uthatha i-traffic update lesibuya khona ke emaphoyiseni asibukela yona imigwaqo yethu ekseni. Sikubusele Nkosi, sicela usiphe i-traffic update lomuhla.
Uvusele ngiphize ngivusele nabo bonke lababukele wona umsakazo sibuko seMaswati. Awu ilive laseSwatini sesilihlolile. Ikakhulu nje ke la sibone khona kunato tikhinyabeto. Ungaba kulapha kamanzini lapho khona umgwaqo sewukhanze umanzi elangeni lalamuhla nasesawuhlola kani tiba netemgwaqo leti lapha nawuqhamuka ngase traffic circle ungena khona edolobheni kanozidumo nawuhlanganisa na umgwaqo longuye phela Nkosi elihlaza naye eManyishane Street awu marofo akhona awasebenzi elangeni lalamuhla kani lapha eTulu Empis Farm lapho khona sikanekise khona siwuhlolile umgwaqo sakhanza ukuthi awukuyahambeka maneke umgwaqo umanti nakuthi ke siyanxusa ukuthi mawenga lapho khona kukanekise khona imbali umane litubane lakho ulehlise kepha ke singemaphoyisa embubene sive kungeda indlela ke ukuthi eMaswati abone kukhona ke naku lesikubekile ngema speed humps lokwenta ukuthi umshayeli noma ngabe bekangakacapheli eve nje imoto yakhe seyisigudlu kukhomba ukuthi akasehlise litubane kepha ke timpawu temgwaqo tibekiwe kukhomba ukuthi kukhona lokwentekako ngalapho umuntu nje angacabanga ukuthi awe emaphoyisa abeke wona kumbe leyo roadblock kani kunalo msebenzi lo lesindawo edolobheni laseMbabane khona umgwaqo yethu imanti imbonywe ngiyo phela inkungu kusuka phansi le kubonkoyoyo uhambe nayo isithathe yehle nathi Malagwane solo umgwaqo nakhona umbonyiwe ngiyo inkungu kani umanti futhi kwathi phela ukuthi awuliyakhema edolobheni laseMbabane nasingena embambangwe kalobamba nakhona imigwaqo yethu imanti sinabo ke bantwana lebasele la ngemuva kunxusa nje ukuthi size sibambisane ukuze ukuthi bantwana bangatholi ukuthi bayashayiseka ngibo phela lebagazeto nasikhwama lokula labanye bahambile baya etindaweni ngekohlukana Empis Farm kanye nakhona Eluyengo nakhona sewuhlolile umgwaqo kuyahambeka kude lokuthi ikhinyabeto letingakhinyabeta yena umsebenzisi wemgwaqo kulapha nje ke eTulu emtimane nawuqhamuka khona eMankayane lapho khona limbonye ngayo inkungu kungaba nguleto msakati lengingakuthulela tona ngesembe ukuthi siMaswati sitawukhona ukuthi sibambisane sibe nelilanga leliphephile ikakhulu sibuke tona tindzawo lapho khona kukanekise khona imbali.
Nesibonga kakhulu isikhathi sakho namhla kuseni ngathi sexwayiso lesikhulu losihambisa imbili ngokuthi imigwaqo imanti ngawo-ke ingahle ishelele sebaqhubi betimoto ke bayexwayiswa ukuthi baqaphele basaqhuba tona timoto emigwaqweni ngale kaloko kude letinye tsikabethu sitawuchubeka nalo hlelo bongosi sibahla lethu market nasibuya tindzaba tesingisi.
Kude lesinye isikhathi ngaphandle kwalesi
abaresearch bafunze
being risky it means ukuthi nalokuwa kwayo kulula
nathi kufuna sente ukukhicita lokho kusembili.
Ujala masada mahle kunathi lesa.
Sabatandi ukuthi njengalokhu
sivile sive sithi khulume.
Welcome back to the program. Let's go for international news. At least 9 Palestinians were killed on Wednesday, Palestinian authorities said, as Israeli forces raided the flashpoint cities of Jenin and those of Talcum, as well as other areas in the occupied West Bank in a major operation involving helicopters and drones. Now, the assault, one of the largest seen in the West Bank for months, followed a series of smaller raids in the area over recent weeks as Israeli forces sought to crush groups of fighters from Palestinian militant groups.
In Jenin on Wednesday, armoured Israeli vehicles drove the streets, blocking exit and entry points and access to hospitals, according to local authorities. After a major Israeli military operation into the West Bank overnight, which claimed multiple lives. This Palestinian Red Crescent paramedic responded to one of the scenes.
Around 2 a.m., the army raided the refugee camp with a big number of soldiers on foot. They raided the camp from different parts.
According to Palestinian health authorities, the operation took place in Jenin, Tulkarm and Tubas in the occupied West Bank. While Israeli incursions are an often daily occurrence, it is rare for them to be carried out simultaneously in several towns at once, as they were on Tuesday night. The country's foreign minister claimed they raided the refugee camps in order to dismantle what he said were Iranian Islamic terror infrastructures.
We must address this threat with the same determination used against terror infrastructures in Gaza, including temporary evacuation of Palestinian residents and any necessary measures. This is a war, and we must win it.
Israeli forces have been stepping up their operations in the north of the West Bank, where armed groups have been particularly active, radicalised by the frequent attacks by Jewish settlers on Palestinian communities. Since the start of the war in the Gaza Strip, more than 650 Palestinians have been killed in the West Bank, according to Palestinian Health Ministry. And at least 20 Israelis have died in clashes, according to Israeli officials.
Israeli and Hezbollah forces engaged in extensive exchanges of fire early on Sunday morning along the Israel-Lebanon border, marking a significant escalation in their long-standing conflict. Now, Hezbollah announced it had launched hundreds of missiles into Israel in retaliation for the killing of its commander, Fawad Shokor, who is in an Israeli airstrike on Beirut last month. This was in response. Israel reported conducting numerous preemptive airstrikes targeting Hezbollah's rocket launchers in the southern Lebanon.
Rocket fire lights up the sky over Galilee in northern Israel, the result of strikes launched by Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. The militant group and the Israeli army have exchanged fire almost daily since Hamas's attack in Israel on October 7th and the ensuing war in Gaza. Hezbollah activists have also demonstrated in Beirut in support of the Palestinian movement.
We salute all our beloved Palestinian resistance factions in Palestine. No matter who they belong to, we are all united in resistance.
Hezbollah, backed by Iran, is considered part of the so-called axis of resistance against Israel and has played its part by launching barrages of missiles and drones over the southern border of Lebanon. The goal of the militant group is to keep the Jewish state in a stranglehold, forced to station part of its army in the north to ease the pressure on Gaza.
Our pilots sit in their cockpits with their planes facing north. We have enough resources to do whatever is necessary in the south. But the Air Force is also facing north, and its power is great.
In the weeks and months since October 7th, Israel has carried out numerous air raids and claimed in April that it had eliminated half of Hezbollah's commanders in southern Lebanon. On July 30th, an Israeli strike near Beirut killed one of Hezbollah's most important military leaders. And on Sunday, the militant group launched hundreds of rockets and drones at Israel in retaliation for his death. Israel then carried out a wave of what it called preemptive strikes on military targets across southern Lebanon. But since the latest exchange, both sides appear to have pulled back from entering into an all-out war. Hezbollah has repeatedly said it would cease its attacks if a ceasefire was reached in Gaza.
If a ceasefire agreement is concluded in Gaza, our front will cease fire without any discussion, regardless of any agreement, mechanism, negotiation, or anything else. It is a commitment we've made as a front of support.
Since October 8th, clashes between the Israeli army and Hezbollah have left at least 605 people dead in Lebanon and 49 in Israel. More than 160,000 people have been displaced on both sides of the Israeli-Lebanese border.
Well, Qaid Farhan al-Qadi was alone underground on Tuesday after 326 days of captivity in Gaza when Israeli forces scoring Hamas' vast tunnel network found and freed him. He was the 8th hostage to be rescued by Israeli forces since about 250 were kidnapped during the October 7 attack that ignited the war, and the first to be found alive underground.
Former hostage Qaid Farhan al-Qadi is escorted by soldiers to a medical center in southern Israel, where he's reunited with family. Seen here in a hospital gown, the 52-year-old's condition is said to be stable after he was rescued from Gaza by the Israeli army.
He's lost weight. Look, this is after 10 months of being inside a tunnel. He's come back from the dead.
Describe to me the moment you first saw him.
Only tears, my brother, only tears from me and from him. Meeting after all this time, when it felt like there was no more chance of seeing him back here again.
The Israeli army says they rescued al-Qadi in an operation in the southern Gaza Strip. They said the father of 11 is one of 8 hostages to be rescued alive since the start of the war, and the first from an underground tunnel. Al-Qadi was working as a guard at a packing factory in a kibbutz on October 7th and was one of 8 members of Israel's Arab Bedouin minority to be abducted by Hamas. The Israeli Prime Minister hailed the rescue, saying it showed the country's approach was working.
We are working tirelessly to bring all our hostages back in 2 main ways, through negotiations and through rescue operations. Both approaches require our military presence on the ground and continuous military pressure on Hamas. We will continue to operate in this manner until we bring everyone home.
A key sticking point in truce talks with Hamas has been Israel's insistence on keeping control of the so-called Philadelphia corridor along the Gaza-Egypt border, while the militant group and Egypt want Israeli troops to fully withdraw from Gaza. Israeli campaign group Hostages and Missing Families Forum described al-Qadi's rescue as miraculous, but said that a ceasefire and negotiated deal remained the only way forward to ensure the return of the other hostages. 104 Israelis are still captive in Gaza, including 34 the military says are dead.
Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky said on Tuesday that the war with Russia would eventually end in dialogue, but that Kyiv had to be in a strong position and that he would present a plan to U.S. President Joseph Biden and his 2 potential successors. The Ukrainian leader, addressing a news conference, said Kyiv's 3-week-old incursion into Russia's Kursk region was part of the plan, but that it also comprised of other steps on the economic and diplomatic fronts.
Since its incursion into Russia's Kursk region, Ukraine has always insisted it has no intention of holding on to the territory. On Tuesday, President Volodymyr Zelensky said the offensive was one of the elements of a peace plan that he would show to Joe Biden and his potential successors.
It will be fair to present this plan to the US president. The success of this plan depends on him. I think I will present this plan to him during a meeting in September. I think it would be the right thing to do to convey this plan to both Kamala Harris and Donald Trump.
Ukraine's military chief said his forces now controlled nearly 1,300 square kilometers of Kursk territory, including 100 settlements.
To date, 594 servicemen of the armed forces of the Russian Federation have been captured in this direction.
After holding a so-called peace summit in June with international partners, Zelensky indicated he saw a second summit as a forum for peace talks. But over a week ago, Russia's foreign minister said such negotiations with Ukraine were out of the question after the Kursk offensive. The incursion does come with risks for Ukraine, and to give it a boost, Kiev wants less restrictions on US-supplied weapons. Washington restricts the use of long-range ballistic missiles it provides Ukraine, which Kiev wants to aim at military targets in Russia. On Tuesday, the army said it had recently carried out the first successful test of a domestically produced ballistic missile as part of efforts to become less dependent on Western weapons.
In an interview, UN experts say terror groups in Africa are increasing their use of drones to carry out operations previously only for nation-states. There's a comprehensive report.
These drone images, which VOA has been unable to independently verify, purport to show Al-Shabaab's attack on an airport in Kenya in 2021, as well as the use of drones by the armed groups JNIM and ISWAP to coordinate attacks in Mali and Nigeria. According to UN experts, terror groups in Africa linked to Al-Qaeda and Islamic State are making increasing use of consumer drones to carry out operations.
Airborne capability, so allows them to have better view of the battle space and their operating environments. Also provides them with a new way of being able to gather intelligence, and in that way also to plan and coordinate attacks, also sometimes with a higher degree of lethality and precision.
Experts point out that militaries fighting insurgencies and facing terrorist threats from the air for the first time are at a disadvantage. Karen Allen, a senior research advisor at the Institute for Security Studies, has written extensively on the subject of drone use by terror groups.
It conveys a significant psychological advantage to armed groups who in the past may have been at a disadvantage compared to regular armies. So it's leveled the playing field, if you like, between regular forces and irregular forces.
While it's unclear exactly how many incidences of drone use by terror groups there have been in Africa, instances have been recorded in Somalia, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Nigeria, and Mozambique. Figueiredo says the Central Sahel has borne the brunt of the new trend, however, which has spread from IS and Al-Qaeda in Iraq and Syria to their affiliates in Africa. Allen adds that the use of drones by terror groups is difficult to stop because drones are easy to buy for civilian use on the internet.
I think there is a real difficulty in being able to stop the use of a technology which is a dual-use technology. I mean, think of a mobile phone. Mobile phone can be used most of the time to be able to communicate and have a completely benign purpose, but it can also be used to trigger a tripwire and to cause an ID to explode.
She adds that African nations need to invest in anti-drone systems. This may include tech that jams radio signals, disabling drones, and even anti-drone lasers.
In this close U.S. presidential race, the southern state of Georgia is one of a handful of states that may decide the outcome. VOA reports on what the campaigns are doing in Georgia and how they hope to carry this key swing state.
Kamala Harris chose a bus trip through Georgia as her first post-Democratic convention campaigning, starting at a high school band practice where running mate Tim Walz talked about the joyful work of their campaign.
I'm grateful to be part of a team with a really great head coach here in your next president of the United States, Kamala Harris.
And Harris praised young Georgians' leadership.
Your generation, all that you guys stand for, everything you have at stake is what is going to propel our country into the next era of what we can do and what we can do.
Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump led Georgia political polls through much of this election cycle. But with Joe Biden out of the race, most now show Trump and Harris are tied. Trump running mate J.D. Vance was in Georgia last week.
We're going to do it together, but only if you get us across the finish line in Georgia. This is one of the most important states in the union.
Vance and Trump are campaigning largely on what they say are economic and immigration policy failures, both of which Trump told Georgia voters should be blamed on Harris.
With your vote, inflation will stop. The illegal aliens will be turned back. They're not coming in. We got to stop them. Did you see where she's now saying, oh, we had a very good border, oh, great. They had the worst border in the history of the world.
Trump winning Republican votes in Georgia is complicated by his denunciation of the state's popular Republican governor, Brian Kemp, who won re-election 2 years ago despite a Trump-backed primary challenge. Earlier this month, Trump repeatedly blamed Kemp and Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger for his Georgia loss in 2020.
Raffensperger and Brian Kemp, your governor, who I got elected, by the way. If it wasn't for me, he would not be your governor. I think everybody knows that. He's a very disloyal person, isn't he? Very disloyal.
With Georgia polls tightening, Trump used his social media site last week to thank Kemp for all his help and support in Georgia. Kemp is set to co-host a Trump fundraiser in Atlanta Thursday. A Georgia grand jury indicted Trump and some of his allies last year over their attempts to illegally interfere with the state's 2020 election results. Trump attorneys this week again appealed for the dismissal of those charges in a case that will not go to trial before Election Day. Georgia's state election board Monday approved new rules that critics say could disrupt finalizing the state's November election results. 2 board members voted against the change. The 3 board members who passed it were all hailed by name by Trump this month as, quote, pit bulls fighting for honesty, transparency, and victory.
Since 2020, Asian Americans have been the fastest growing group of eligible voters in the United States. That's according to the Pew Research Center. In 2022, California had the most eligible Asian American voters in the United States, followed by New York and Texas.
For flavors from Asia, Houston, Texas is a one-stop shop. The foods found here reflect the melting pot of Asian cultures living in the counties that make up the greater Houston region. One of them is suburban Fort Bend County, where Asians make up more than 21% of the population. It's also where Chinese-American immigrant J.J. Clements lives.
I think for either party, they really cannot afford to ignore the Asian community.
Asian Americans are among the fastest-growing ethnic groups in the U.S., according to census data. Voter turnout among this group has also seen record increases in the past 2 presidential elections. The Democratic nominee for president, Kamala Harris, has taken notice and recently released 2 ads targeting Asians. More Asian Americans call themselves Democrat than Republican. One reason? More than half of Asian American voters are immigrants.
I think Trump's policies hurt minorities a lot.
A lot of his policies not only took aim at illegal immigrants from Mexico or South America, but also restricted legal immigration.
Still, a 2024 survey of Asian American voters found that 22% identify as Republicans.
Less government is what Asians want. More freedom and less tax.
The survey also found 31% of Asian American voters identify as independents. But 42% of Asian American voters surveyed say they have not been contacted by political candidates or a political party. Daniel Wong, who had served in local elected office, says Asian American voters are partly responsible.
We are not organized. We don't understand the American political system. That's why we don't know how we're going to put our energy together to shoot for whatever common goal, which we don't have.
The projected 15 million Asian Americans eligible to vote have roots in different countries. Unifying Asian voters has been difficult. Getting Asians to donate to campaigns has also been a challenge, something Wong saw up close while running for a city council seat.
Asian, they are not used to donate to the political means. They don't understand how it works.
Clements had also run for local office.
Asian society, I don't think they, like a Christian community, they have a habit to give. So you have to educate them, and you need to outreach them.
During the last presidential election, close to 60% of Asian Americans voted. Political activists say forming relationships with new Asian American citizens and educating them about the political process will mobilize them to get involved.
Following more than 9 months of unjust detention, American-Russian journalist Alsu Kumasheva is adjusting to life in freedom with her family in Prague. While in Washington this week to receive an award, she tells VOA the fate of other political prisoners is on her mind.
It's the moment Alsu Kumasheva had dreamed of for months. An emotional reunion with her family at Joint Base Andrews outside Washington after more than 9 months of wrongful detention in Russia.
I was greeted by the president and by vice president, and it was such an honor for me, but everything I could see was my daughters.
A journalist for VOA sister outlet Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty in Prague, Kumasheva was convicted in a secret trial on charges of spreading false information about the Russian military.
I was jailed for 288 days, and every minute of it is suffering. It's going through humiliation, and inmates in Russia and Belarus, they don't have any rights.
Freed as part of a historic prisoner swap on August 1st, Kumasheva traveled first to a military base in Texas and then to her home in Prague to recover.
I want to enjoy my life from now on.
Back in Prague, finally setting foot in her family's apartment was overwhelming, she said.
I cried. I cried for the first time since many days. I knew I would cry because it meant a lot. It was such a happy cry. I still can't stop hugging my children.
Kumasheva's case is part of Moscow's wider crackdown on independent media. She was one of 2 American journalists the United States says were wrongfully detained in Russia. Like Kumasheva, Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich was detained and convicted in a sham trial before also being released in the swap. Learning that Gershkovich would walk free was emotional for Paul Beckett, who led the journal's campaign to secure the reporter's release.
Tears of relief, smiles of joy. Hard to fully comprehend. I think it's probably still a bit hard to fully comprehend, but yeah, just a moment of an enormous weight lifted, and all of the effort felt like at that moment it paid off.
Gershkovich is doing well, despite having spent around 500 days in prison, Beckett says.
It's just amazing to get a life started, or restarted. So that's what we've been focused on. I think he's taking time to decompress and just find his feet again.
The cases of Gershkovich and Kumasheva highlight the Russian government's harsh crackdown on independent journalism.
And journalists are afraid to seek independent sources of information because all those sources have been banned or have been designated illegal in Russia. The whole society and also media has been put on survival mode.
Now reunited with her family, Kumasheva says she wants to turn her attention to political prisoners still jailed, including 3 of her colleagues at RFERL.
The rapid rise in disposable electronic cigarettes or vape usage is creating a tidal wave of pollution, and it's raising serious environmental concerns.
Here in the New York City borough of Brooklyn, Nora, who asked us not to use her last name for privacy reasons, is checking in on one of the many vape disposable boxes that she has placed in stores, smoke shops, and nightclubs.
We are going to Maison Jar, which is a refillery store in Brooklyn, and we are going to visit a vape recycling box, which is a drop-off box where people drop their used vapes, and they will be recycled as electronics.
Nora says she began these self-funded efforts because of all the discarded vapes she saw on the city streets.
What I do with the vapes, I take them to recycling for electronics. New York City has locations open 1 day a week in every borough where people can take their electronics.
Nora's initiative is a grassroots effort to combat the growing problem of vape pollution. However, the challenges are vast, as activists say.
we're throwing out 4.5 vapes per second in this country. The problem is that these vapes are made of different components, all of which are really hard to recycle or to deal with once they've been thrown out.
Many of these devices contain hazardous materials like lithium batteries and nicotine, which can cause significant environmental harm. A University of California, San Francisco professor who has studied this issue extensively explains the dangers.
Nicotine is fundamentally a neurotoxin. What that means is that it's toxic to neurological systems, including our brain and all of the nerves in our body. So when you have these kinds of devices that are tossed on the ground, and then there are rain events, the result is that the e-liquid with the nicotine and the other chemicals leaches out into water and starts to pollute the immediate surrounding environment.
Even the leading association of vape retailers has recently adopted a platform calling for banning the import of these single-use products.
Safada has several hundred members that are retailers, manufacturers in the vapor space. We recently polled them and took the position against disposable vapes for their impact on the environment. We believe that they are bad for the environment.
Myers claims her members are still selling these products out of business necessity.
Unfortunately, many of the members have been forced to remain viable, so they would prefer not to. But yes, they do sell them because if they don't, they will go out of business.
Several countries, including China, Iran, and the United Kingdom, are moving toward strict regulation of these products. While the U.S. still lags behind in regulation and recycling efforts, individuals like Nora are raising awareness, paving the way for stronger action to curb these devices in the future.
In the summer of 1993, 46 Israeli, Palestinian, Egyptian, and American kids gathered at a camp in the state of Maine. The camp was the brainchild of journalist and author John Wallach, who wanted to provide children of war the chance to build a more secure future.
Each summer, kids from conflict regions in the Middle East, Central Asia, and U.S. gather in this quiet setting in the U.S. state of Maine to build understanding and friendship.
Wait, do you know what bread is that?
It's part of a project called Seeds of Peace.
I think for many of them, this is the first time they're really able to meet face to face, to have the kinds of slow conversations that enable them to better understand their different lived experiences.
Kids often arrive at camp with all the negative stereotypes found in their segregated communities. Shams Hafez of Egypt was a camper in 2018 and returned this year as a counselor.
And then I come here and I meet those people that were supposed to be bad. And I played sports with them, I had meals with them, we cried together, we laughed together. And for me that was very special.
There are plenty of the usual summer camp activities, but there are also daily sessions where participants talk about conflicts that ravage their communities. Armour says it's not all fun and games.
This is not an easy place to be. This is a hard place to be on many days. It is emotional, it is difficult, and it needs to be because the issues that they're dealing with are real.
Organizers say the goal is to break barriers and build enduring friendships. 18-year-old Alize Amir Parvez of Pakistan says she built a friendship with a fellow camper by sharing spices on meals.
She brought spices back from home that I didn't bring. So every meal we'd be like, oh, give me the chaat masala, like I need that right now.
Officials say once personal relationships are formed, campers begin to see conflict in a different way. Aliza's friend, 15-year-old Anajot Sachdev, is from Mumbai.
What really stuck with me was like one has got to be conflict being more political than it is about the actual people of the land.
For security reasons, Seeds of Peace ask us not to speak to kids from the Middle East. Kamal Amashorawe is a camp counselor who escaped from the Gaza war.
To come here and talk about peace is a huge challenge for kids.
Noam Chachman is a camp counselor from Israel.
And I think that just made it even more complicated, even more painful.
Seeds of Peace says their research indicates 80% of more than 8,000 alumni are still actively working to transform conflict. And there are plans to plant more seeds.
If we can continue to add more people to that kind of a collective, working together across borders, within borders, to create that kind of world, then perhaps we can see the kinds of tipping points that we need to avoid the kind of violence that we see today.
That is how we end our English news. We go for a net break by looking at our weather forecast.
kude lesinye isikhathi ngaphandle kwalesi
aba-researche bafunze.
being risky it means ukuthi nalokuwa kwayo kulula
nathi kufuna sente ukukhicita lokusembili.
Renewal of TV licenses for 2024 is now open. Here is a quick reminder. A viewer's TV license costs 180 emalangeni per device. Other accessories such as decoders and set-top box cost 50 emalangeni per device. For traders and repairers, TV license costs 300 emalangeni per business area. And now, to pay your TV license, use these following methods. You can use MTN Mobile Money with the number 762222000 or dial *007 *3 *7#. Or you can use Eswatini Imali. And you can pay our TV license at any post office in the country. Another option is you can use any NetBank branch using our TV license account number 119900430037. Don't forget, when paying for your viewer's TV license, reference with your PIN at all times. And when paying for a retailer TV license, reference with your TIN at all times. For more information, call us on 7802-4543 or 34050163 or 34020879. And you can send us a WhatsApp message on 762222000.
Eswatini TV will be at the International Trade Fair 2024, bringing you exciting opportunities to connect with a wider audience and boost your brand visibility. ESTVA is offering incredible specials that include 5-minute on-location interviews, engaging viewers directly, sport advertisements, 30 seconds congratulatory messages, and much more. Do not miss out on this chance to increase brand awareness, generate lead and sales. Our details are displayed on the screen.
Welcome back. You're still watching Kusile Breakfast Show. Sakuvusela nalo sanza kusivulela besivetshela ukuthi sidabe sikhulumisana na founder we Divine Artist batabeke bahost EIM Man Conference on the 4th of September 2024. Batabe nje bakhuluma tindzaba gender based violence. Kahle kahle tabe ku dialogue yemaphosa noma ke besilisa kuva ukuthi what is the root cause ukuthi batikhanze sebahlukubeta bomake kanye nemantfombatana, and also guest appearance tabe tabe kunaye Dr. Jerry Mafokeng. Dr. Jerry Mafokeng waseNingizimu Africa. He released a book nayo likhuluma ngato about forgiveness and resentment. But to tell us more about that, we're joined by Teli Mdluli, who is the founder of Divine Artists. A very good morning, Teli, and welcome to the program, Siyabonga. Indaba gender-based violence indaba lenkulu eveni, not only in the country but globally as well. How did you come about with this idea to host a men's conference?
Okay, I think first of all, since most people who know me as a poet, they know that most of my poetry actually covers gender-based violence and mental health. So as they say, if you want to listen, if you want to know what's happening in a country, listen to a writer. So as a writer, over the years, we always, as for me, I'm just always writing, stop gender-based violence, stop gender-based violence. And it's more like we are shmayela, but are we born in change? I know, there's other organizations who are always there pushing, let's work on this. But when I sat down just as myself and I'm like, you know what? I want to write different content now, not something, I don't want to say stop gender-based violence. We've been saying it over the years. Maybe there's a problem. We are always giving attention to the women and the girl child. We have not sat down and say, can we talk to the boy child, to the man, and really get to know what's going on, maybe the root cause and of Guti really what's going on. And we always say Guti invotes aikali. So then you find Guti invotes avela ngeke izikhale because Gutiwa aikali. And I'm actually from next month, September is Suicide Month. So our event, it's not only on GBV, but on mental health. But we just want to have a dialogue. The men have a dialogue with Ndate Jerry, as well as the other sponsors who've come on board. Could see what can we do? What is it that maybe we don't understand? And also get to listen to the men and see, Guti, isn't there anything that can change then if we now give attention to the men instead of just the women?
Yeah. Police, the DPM's office, SWAC, and many other stakeholders or organizations that deal with gender-based violence cases and issues reveal that, cases are escalating. Just last year alone, over 15,000 cases were reported. So why is it important for men to have a dialogue, and just discuss issues that affect them?
The cases have escalated. And also, if you can do your research, a lot of men have been committing suicide. So you realize that there is a problem, a mental problem. And just besides the GBV, there is a problem that we need to really sit down and, see what is going on. And I think with the men coming in, opening up, it's just them, because this event it's just men and also singing mothers who are raising boys. So that, bakulise each generation that's going to be better than the one that we have of Gushai, Abafat and all of that. And this event is not even about bashing men. It's about sitting down now and trying to understand so that we find, a way forward, a positive one. And hopefully, after that, then we will see the change. But we can't just see change in one day. I think this is a conversation that we need to, have. And for me, that's my plan, just to, to make sure that the cases go down, because it's sad. It's really sad.
It's really sad. Men go through a lot, childhood traumas, baby mamas that ill-treat them, wives, girlfriends. So what are you hoping to achieve with this conference? What is the goal of this conference?
I think also just to add on your point, besides just also the childhood traumas, you find that other men, even this identity crisis and all of that. There's one... I was listening to Dr. Jerry, one of his interviews in South Africa the other day, when he discovered he was actually not that same name that he was using, Mofokeng, when he discovered he was 54. And he said something like, because you know sometimes you were like, Uba, like as a man, no, I'm okay because of this. But deep down, those things affect you and affect even your family, your wife and your kids. You find good sone anger, and you just take out that anger. Kulo muntu lomthandzako. Ungakhoni lokukhuluma. So that's a problem as well. What I'd like to, us to achieve as well as the sponsors that are on board, to make sure that when we come out of there, the men feel like, you know what, I've just been to therapy, you know, I was able to pour out everything, and let's try and heal them, because there's a problem. Yeah.
For King, he's one of your guest speakers at the event. You also released a book speaking about forgiveness and resentment. Tell us more about his appearance on the conference.
Actually, I think I met Dr. Jerry last year because of my love for theater. And then when he invited me there, he gave me the book to read the book. And after I read the book, I was like, wow, you know, I cannot believe this man has been through this. So all the issues that he has been through, your mental health, disability, also not knowing your identity, anger, financial struggles, they contribute to GBV and mental health. So I actually thought, you know, this is a good guy to come and have a sit down with the man, which is something that he's actually doing, you know, these days, a motivational speaker, motivating men mostly on these issues, mental health and GBV.
Okay, so who can attend the conference? I know it's a men's conference, but they are mothers who are raising sons, you know, the nephews. Who can actually attend the event?
For me, I'll say mostly organizations, like it's we actually just we wish that organizations can just pay for their employees. We have if you can book a table of 10 for your men in the organizations and bring them there, as well as the single mothers who are raising boys, or just mothers who are raising boys, to make sure that their kids are actually, you know, they don't grow to be, you know, to be what we're seeing at the moment. We want a positive change. And also just anyone who's interested, really, besides you just booking the table for 10, you can also buy the tickets online. And if you want to book then the tables, you can give us a phone call. But Kwanyalo are really pushing for mostly the organizations, and we are actually getting a positive response, because, you know, let's send our men to this
for counseling.
Yeah.
So speaking of organizations, the TPM's office will attend. Will it attend this event?
Yes. TPM's office is partnered with us. UNFPA being the main sponsor, SOS, because I think our SOS is also raising boys and kids who don't even have parents. Labanye uthola ukuthi nalawo makhaya abhidlitwa ngiyo GBV, where maybe the mother is now dead, the dad is in prison because he killed the mother. And we also have Georgetown University, who ifocus yabo at these days is no means no. But then how can a man or a boy understand when you are saying no? You know, if nabo they have their own issues that yabona lesingakakhulumi nabo ukuthi when a girl says no, so angeke uqhubeke it's rape if you do that. So yeah, those are the sponsors that are on board so far.
Okay, so you've postponed the event. It was supposed to be held this weekend, but it's now the 4th of September. Where is it? Where is it going to be?
The 4th of September, actually, we're at the Alliance Church, from 10 to 1 p.m. And then the men can go back to work.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. No, thank you so much, Teli. And men will definitely attend issues that actually affect them. We'll go for an ad break. But before that, let's leave you with a clip on the briefing on UN Security Council members on the situation in Gaza.
Sabatandi ukuthi njengalokhu
Sifile sive sitikhulumeni. Eswatini TV will be at the International Trade Fair 2024, bringing you exciting opportunities to connect with a wider audience and boost your brand visibility. ESTVA is offering incredible specials that include 5-minute on-location interviews, engaging viewers directly, sport advertisements, 30 seconds congratulatory messages, and much more. Do not miss out on this chance to increase brand awareness, generate lead and sales. Our details are displayed on the screen.
Welcome back. Let's take a look at this briefing on UN Security Council members on the situation in Gaza. Tor Winsland, Special Coordinator for the Middle East Peace Process, said a ceasefire and hostage release deal in Gaza is imperative now for regional peace and security. The United Nations Security Council heard urgent calls for a ceasefire and the release of hostages in Gaza, as well as reports about the worsening humanitarian crisis, including a polio outbreak.
I address you today with grave concern about the trajectory in the situation in the Middle East. The war in Gaza, with all its human tragedy, is serious risk of regional escalation, and the unresolved Israeli-Palestinian conflict and continued occupation are combining to create a combustible situation in the whole of the Middle East. Our individual and collective capacity to manage or resolve this crisis are stretched beyond their limits. Any spark or miscalculation could set off a series of uncontrollable escalations, embroiling millions more in the conflict. We need a ceasefire now. We must continue all efforts to alleviate human suffering in the region. That means an immediate ceasefire and release of hostages in Gaza. It means diplomatic steps for de-escalation in the region, and it means irreversible moves towards re-establishing a political framework to end the conflict and establish a two-state solution. If any one of them remains unaddressed, then prospects for a more stable, peaceful, and secure region will remain elusive. Mr. President, the war in Gaza continues to take a staggering toll on human life. In the more than 10 months of war since the horrific acts of terror perpetrated by Hamas and other Palestinian armed groups on 7 October 23, more than 40,000 Palestinians and over 1,600 Israelis and foreign nationals have been killed. 109 Israelis are still held in Gaza, and the ones alive denied humanitarian visit. Tens of thousands of people have been injured, and vast majority of them Palestinians, including a staggering number of women and children. In Gaza, incidents of mass civilian casualties, airstrikes by Israel on schools and mosques sheltering the displaced, and the wanton destruction of civilian infrastructure are fueling suffering and violence, which is reverberating throughout the broader region. The indiscriminate launching of rockets by Hamas and other groups towards population centers in Israel continues. Civilian objects, including infrastructure and UN premises, are also reportedly being used to shield fighters and military objectives, endangering the lives of civilians around them. The lives of the remaining hostages are at grave risk. Many Palestinians in Gaza feel they have nowhere safe left to turn. Over the past months, around 200,000 Palestinians have been affected by evacuation orders. This is merely the latest round of a mass displacement in Gaza, where nearly 2 million people have been forced out of their homes and shelters during the war, most of them multiple times. 85% of the Strip has come under evacuation orders since 7 October. Mr. President, despite facing overwhelming challenges, UN agencies and humanitarian organizations continue to deliver life-saving assistance with remarkable courage through all available crossing points. However, their efforts are jeopardized by unsafe conditions on the ground, which are exacerbated by a complete breakdown of law and order. If these unacceptable conditions are allowed to prevail, humanitarian operations in Gaza will continue to fall short of meeting the massive needs of the population. Mr. President, the scale of destruction is immense and it will take years, if not decades, to recover. The UN is working to repair and improve almost entirely defunct water, sanitation and hygiene systems in Gaza. The 5 wastewater treatment plants have shut down and 5 out of 6 solid waste management facilities are damaged. The Palestinian Ministry of Health just confirmed the first cases of polio in 25 years. 1.6 million doses of polio vaccine have been released for a campaign scheduled to begin on 31st of August. The UN estimates nearly 40 million tons of debris have been generated in this conflict. Clearing the debris from key areas alone is estimated to take at least 5 years. Mr. President, while the eyes of the international community are focused on Gaza, the occupied West Bank is a tinderbox of violence and tension. Israeli security forces continue to carry out large-scale operations in Area A, including targeting Hamas, PIJ and other armed groups in densely populated refugee camps and Palestinian urban centers. These operations often result in lethal exchanges with these groups, in adding to the killing or injuring of bystanders. Fatal attacks by Palestinian militants on Israelis in the West Bank and in Israel continued, including a failed bombing attack claimed by Hamas and PIJ in Tel Aviv on 19 August. The Israeli settler rampage in the Palestinian village of Yit near Nablus that killed 1 Palestinian, critically injured others on 15 August was yet another illustration of the violent consequences of settlement expansions in the occupied West Bank and the persistent lack of accountability for such crimes. Inflammatory rhetoric and provocative acts are further inflaming the situation. In recent days, we have seen Hamas threaten to launch a new campaign of suicide bombings. We have also seen 2 Israeli ministers, alongside hundreds of Israelis, visit the Holy Esplanade on the Jewish holiday of Tish B'Av. Let me be clear. If we are to prevent yet another spiraling escalation, the violence must end. There are no justification for acts of terror, civilians must be protected, and the incitement must stop. Any violation of the status quo at the holy sites must also be firmly rejected. Mr. President, the war in Gaza and the deteriorating situation in the occupied West Bank are continuing in the context of a wider regional tension and the threat of even more serious escalation. Across the Blue Line and beyond, exchanges between Israel and Hezbollah continue to intensify, particularly following the recent strike at Mashd al-Shams in the Israeli-occupied Golan, while resulted in the killing of 12 children, followed by a subsequent strike in the southern suburbs of Beirut that killed a senior Hezbollah commander. In the wider region, several fatal events exacerbated tension. Aerial attacks towards Israel from various locations across the region that Israel has attributed to Iran-backed forces, including a Houthi drone strike in Tel Aviv, Israeli strike that targeted Hudaydah port infrastructure in response, and the killing of Ismail Haniyeh, the leader of Hamas Politburo in Tehran. Mr. President, with all of these negative trends, and after more than 300 days of war in Gaza, we are at an inflection point in the Middle East. A ceasefire and hostage release deal in Gaza is imperative now for regional peace and security. I have continued to emphasize that message in support of regional de-escalation in discussions with all relevant parties and member states in the region, including Lebanon, Egypt, and Qatar. I commend the mediators, Egypt, Qatar, and US, for their continued relentless efforts in Doha and in Cairo this week. I urge the parties to reach a deal in the coming days. There is simply no time to lose. The UN remain committed and ready to scale up humanitarian assistance during a ceasefire and supporting implementation of a deal. Only a sustained ceasefire can enable a full-scale humanitarian and early recovery response in Gaza. Mr. President, the profound social, economic and political fallout from the devastation is yet to be seen and comprehended. We must work to put in place as soon as possible the political and security framework necessary to more ably address the humanitarian crisis, start early recovery, and eventually rebuild Gaza, as well as changing the negative dynamic at the West Bank. These political and security frameworks, even ones that are considered transitional, cannot be divorced from the context of the ongoing Israeli occupation and unresolved Israeli-Palestinian conflict. There are no shortcuts and no quick fixes. Security and governance are intrinsically linked and must be addressed in tandem to achieve a lasting peace in Gaza and address the West Bank situation. It is imperative that we establish a comprehensive political framework that is accepted by Palestinian population and addresses the legitimate aspirations and grievances while also addressing Israel's legitimate security concern. The UN will strongly support this work. This framework must facilitate a Palestinian government that can effectively govern both Gaza and the occupied West Bank and ensure stability and security across the occupied Palestinian territory. The Palestinian Authority must be at the center of governance in the occupied Palestinian territory. There is simply no credible alternative. However, to achieve this and to promote a more durable and credible model of governance to ensure stability and security for Palestinians in Israel, Palestinians and Israelis, steps must be taken by all parties and by the international community to strengthen and support the PA. Violence in the occupied West Bank needs to be significantly reduced, including violence taking place in the context of scaled-up Israeli security operations. Palestinian security forces need to be supported and empowered to carry out their responsibility fully. Israeli measures that weaken the PA need to be urgently addressed, including IDF operations in Area A, settlement expansion, settler violence, and extreme financial pressure. The international community must work together to address the PA's persistent financial crisis, strengthen its capacity, and enable its return to Gaza. Recent commitments from the World Bank and the European Union offer the promise of relief, but will not resolve the precarity of the PA's financial situation. We must work together to strengthen the ability of the PA to meet the needs of their people. Most importantly, for any of these efforts to be credible and durable, a political horizon must be re-established. Security fixes alone will not lead to a more stable future for anyone in the region. But let us not be naive about what is required. It will take concerted effort from committed leaders from the region and the international community. It may also require us to rethink how we get there. The steps I've outlined above, which are informed by the principles I outlined to you in May, are a start. Mr. President, finally, ultimately the only path of these vicious circles of despair is a political horizon that will end the occupation and achieve a two-state solution. Israel and an independent, democratic, continuous, viable and sovereign Palestinian state, living side by side in peace and security with secure and recognized borders on the basis of the pre-67 lines with Jerusalem as the capital of both. The United Nations will continue to support all efforts towards this goal. I thank you.
All right, so that was a briefing by the UN Security Council on the Middle East tensions still going on. It's 2 minutes before 8 o'clock. We've come to the end of our program. Lomutla, thank you for tuning in. If you've just joined us, worry not, you can still watch this episode on our YouTube page, Eswatini TV.
Sexaxolo esikhulu bongosi imigwaqo cishe imanti velonke abaqhubi bemoto ke baqaphele basaqhuba dona dingasheleli di balimata.
Yeah,
Coming up on TPI.
We are so excited because we are back on set after 4 years being away. We know Muyiwa has been in London, but this is home, Virginia Beach. So we want to take you behind the scenes to see what's really going on.
Hello and welcome to TPI. I'm your host, Muyiwa Olariwaju. I am so happy to announce that we are back home. Since COVID, TPI has been recording remotely in London, but finally we returned to our set in the Virginia Beach studios. I'm so happy to be back, and I want to thank you, our viewers, for sticking with us. Your support has been invaluable. It's been quite a ride, and you've been